The city learned your name when you stopped existing. Nora Calloway had been invisible for
Hey,
10
you look like you
months.
could use a
10
break.
months since the
Yeah?
night her
What do you
mother's
mean?
breathing
Come
stopped.
with me, I'll explain.
10 months
Okay, I'm
since a
in.
man with a snake tattooed around his neck had smiled while pressing a needle into Ellen Calloway's arm. 10 months since a 12-year-old girl had watched through the crack in a closet door
Come on,
as the
keep
only
moving!
person
I'm
who had ever
trying!
loved her
Where are we
convulsed
going?
on a
Almost
stained
there,
carpet
watch out!
and died. It happened on an October night when the rain came sideways and the street lights on Grover Avenue flickered like dying heartbeats. The apartment smelled the way it always smelled near the end.
Ready for a ride,
Chemical
champ?
sweetness
Yeah,
layered
let's
over
go!
something
All right,
rotten,
hold on tight.
something decayed, the smell of a life collapsing in on itself like a building with no foundation left. Nora had been doing homework, math, fractions. She remembered that detail with a clarity that bordered on cruelty because her brain had decided to preserve everything about that night in glass, every sound, every shadow, every breath. She had been sitting cross-legged on her bed, erasing a wrong answer for the third time when the front door opened and two sets of footsteps came in. Her mother's footsteps, she knew, unsteady, shuffling, the walk of someone whose body had become a stranger to them. The other footsteps were heavy, deliberate, the steps of a man who owned whatever room he entered. Ellen's voice came first, thin, desperate, stripped of every pretense of dignity. "I just need more time. I have the records. I can get them to you by Friday." The man's voice was calm, almost pleasant, the kind of voice that told jokes at dinner parties and ordered expensive wine. "Friday doesn't work for us, Ellen. You've had 6 months. 6 months of creative bookkeeping. 6 months of skimming. Did you think we wouldn't notice Nora's pencil stop moving?" Something in that voice made every hair on her arm stand at attention, made her lungs forget how to expand. She moved without thinking, slid off the bed, crossed the small bedroom in 3 silent steps and opened the closet door. She climbed inside, pulled the door almost shut, left a crack just wide enough for one eye. Through that crack, she saw the living room. Her mother stood near the kitchen counter. Thin. God, she had gotten so thin. Cheekbones sharp enough to cut eyes sunken into dark hollows, the ghost of the woman who used to make heart-shaped pancakes on Sunday mornings. The man stood across from her, tall, lean in a way that suggested muscle rather than absence. A snake tattoo curled up the left side of his neck, its fangs disappearing behind his ear. His eyes reflected no light, no warmth, no humanity. Just a flat reptilian impatience that said he had all the time in the world and none of it belonged to Ellen Calloway. "Please." Ellen's hands were shaking. "I have a daughter, a little girl who needs me." The man tilted his head, studied her the way a scientist studies a specimen. "Then you should have thought about that before you stole from us." What happened next took less than 2 minutes. 2 minutes to end a life. 2 minutes to destroy a childhood. 2 minutes to turn a 12-year-old girl into something feral, something broken, something that would spend the better part of a year learning how to be invisible. The man moved fast. His hand closed around Ellen's throat. Not squeezing, controlling. He pushed her down onto the couch with casual efficiency. Ellen fought. She scratched, kicked, twisted, but she weighed nothing by then. The drugs had eaten her from the inside out, left her hollow as a paper lantern. He produced a syringe from his jacket pocket, already filled, already prepared. This was not impulsive. This was planned, methodical, an execution dressed up as an overdose. He found the vein on Ellen's inner arm with practiced ease, pushed the plunger down. All of it, every drop. Ellen's eyes went wide. Her body arched off the couch. Then the convulsions started. Violent, terrible, her limbs jerking in patterns that no living body should make. Foam gathered at the corners of her mouth. Her heels drummed against the cushions. The man stepped back, watched, smiled. That smile. Nora would see it every night for the next 10 months. In nightmares and shadows, in the faces of strangers who bore no resemblance to him at all. That expression lived inside her like a parasite feeding on everything good, everything hopeful, everything worth keeping. Ellen Calloway stopped moving, stopped breathing, stopped being anyone's mother. The apartment went quiet. The man straightened his jacket, adjusted his cuffs, and turned toward the hallway. His eyes swept the space with professional thoroughness. They landed on the closet door, on the crack, on the single eye watching from the darkness. Nora's heart stopped. The man stared at that crack for 3 seconds. 3 seconds that lasted 3 centuries. Then the corners of his mouth lifted again. That same look. The one that said cruelty was a pleasure and mercy was a foreign language. Run, little girl. Run before I change my mind about loose ends. Nora ran. She burst from the closet, sprinted past her mother's body without looking, hit the front door at full speed, and plunged into the Oakland night. The rain swallowed her. The city opened its mouth of dark alleys and abandoned buildings and let her disappear into its belly. She did not stop running until her lungs caught fire and her legs buckled on a sidewalk 6 blocks away. She collapsed behind a dumpster, pressed her face into her knees, and screamed into the fabric of her jeans until her throat tore raw. Nobody came, nobody heard, nobody cared. That was the night Nora Calloway learned the most important lesson the streets had to offer. You could scream as loud as you wanted. The world would keep on spinning without slowing down. Now it was August, the kind of August that baked concrete until it shimmered. That turned metal too hot to touch. That made every breath feel like inhaling fire through a wet cloth. Nora sat on the corner of 5th Street with a piece of cardboard in her lap. The sign said, "Hungry, please help," but the marker had died after please, so she had scratched the rest with a ballpoint pen found in a gutter. Nobody read it anyway. People had a way of looking through her, past her, around her. Their eyes would slide right over the small figure in oversized clothes like she was a stain on the sidewalk. Something to step around, something that did not require acknowledgement. She had learned early that being seen was dangerous. Men saw young girls on streets and got ideas. Ideas that made Nora's skin crawl, that made her bind her chest with ace bandages stolen from a pharmacy, that made her keep her voice low and her hair chopped short with dull scissors. She became a ghost, a boy-shaped shadow that Oakland forgot the moment it passed. Nearly a year on the streets had taught her things no 12-year-old should know. Which dumpsters behind which restaurants had the freshest discards. Which parking garages had warm air vents for winter nights. Which alleys had exits and which were traps. How to sleep with one eye open. How to make a can of beans last 3 days. How to stop feeling hungry by drinking water until her stomach ached with fullness that was not fullness at all. Her hands shook. They always shook now. A constant tremor that had started the night her mother died and never stopped. Doctors would have called it trauma response. Nora called it breathing. She had one friend, Tommy Briggs. 15 years old, sandy hair permanently unwashed, a crooked grin that made him look younger than he was. Tommy had found Nora 3 days into her street life, curled behind a laundromat, too dehydrated to move. He had brought her water, taught her the rules, showed her which shelters asked too many questions and which let you eat without demanding your story. Tommy was the only person who knew Nora was a girl. She had told him on a frozen December night when hypothermia had loosened her tongue and lowered her defenses. He had not blinked, had not changed how he treated her, had simply nodded and said, "Your secret is your armor," and had never mentioned it again. But Tommy drifted, disappeared for days at a time. Came back with bruises. He would not explain money. He would not account for a haunted look behind his crooked grin that Nora recognized because she saw the same thing every time she caught her reflection in a shop window. The look of someone being consumed by something they could not name. The afternoon sun hammered 5th Street. Sweat traced lines down Nora's spine, soaking into the 3 layers of shirts she wore despite the heat. The layers hid how thin she had become, how her ribs pressed against skin like the bars of a cage, how her collarbones jutted sharp enough to cut. Across the street, Rosie's Diner gleamed in the afternoon light, red vinyl booths visible through smudged windows. The smell of frying bacon and fresh coffee drifted out every time the door opened and every time it hit Nora like a physical blow. Her stomach clenched so hard it felt like a fist closing around her organs. She had not eaten in 2 days. Well, she had found half a burrito in a trash can yesterday. The tortilla had been soggy, the filling questionable, but she had eaten it anyway. Hunger did that. It made you grateful for garbage. It erased the memory of being a person who ate at tables, who had favorite foods, who complained when vegetables touched the mashed potatoes. The diner door opened with a cheerful jingle. Ruth Donovan stepped out, wiping her hands on her apron. Mid-40s, gray threading through dark hair pulled into a practical bun, eyes that missed nothing and forgave everything. She owned Rosie's had owned it for 15 years, ever since her husband died in a construction accident and left her with a failing business and a grief she wore like a second skin. Ruth had rebuilt, alone. No investors, no partners, no safety net, just Ruth and her diner and a stubbornness that Oakland could not crack. Nora admired that more than she could articulate. Every Tuesday, the same ritual. Ruth would step outside during the afternoon lull, survey her little kingdom of cracked sidewalk and chipped paint. And every Tuesday, Ruth would see Nora. Really see her. Not through her, not past her, at her. Their eyes met across 2 lanes of sporadic traffic. Ruth did not wave, did not smile, just looked. Then she turned and went back inside. Nora's heart sank. Maybe today was different. Maybe Ruth had finally decided the skinny street kid was not worth the trouble. The door jingled again. Ruth emerged carrying a white paper bag. She waited for a gap in traffic cross 5th Street with the confident stride of a woman who had lived in Oakland her whole life and was not afraid of much. She stopped 3 feet from Nora, close enough to talk, far enough not to crowd. Turkey Club. Ruth set the bag down on the concrete beside Nora's cardboard sign. Her voice was quiet, steady, a voice built for delivering comfort without making a production of it. Extra bacon, pickles on the side because I remember you don't like them touching the bread. Nora stared at the bag, her throat sealed shut. When was the last time someone had remembered something about her? When was the last time anyone had cared about pickles? Thank you. The words came out scratchy, rough. She did not use her voice much these days. Ruth crouched down, knees cracking. How's the shoulder? 2 weeks ago, Nora had been jumped by 3 older boys who decided her corner was worth stealing. She had fought back hard the way you fight when losing means dying, but 3 against 1 ended the way it always did. She had escaped with a wrenched shoulder and bruises that still yellowed her ribs. Better. Nora lied. Ruth's eyes said she knew it was a lie, but she did not push. That was the thing about Ruth. She helped without demanding explanations, fed without requiring stories, saw without insisting on being seen back. There's a shelter on Morrison Street. Ruth's voice was careful, gentle the way people are gentle when they know their words will be refused. They've got beds, hot showers, people who can help. Nora shook her head. She had tried shelters. They asked questions required parents or guardians called social services when a 12-year-old showed up alone. And social services meant foster care, which meant homes where men looked at you wrong, where other kids stole your things, where you learned fast that the word safe was just a sound adults made to feel better about failing you. I'm okay, another lie. Neither of them acknowledged it. Ruth sighed, reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a $20 bill, held it between 2 fingers like an offering. Buy yourself something, socks, soap, whatever you need. Nora's hand trembled as she took the money. $20. It felt like a fortune, like hope folded into paper. Why? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Why do you help me? Ruth was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of someone who had thought about this answer many times. Because you remind me that one person can make a difference. Because kindness matters even when the world says it doesn't. Because you deserve to be seen. She stood knees protesting. Every Tuesday, Nora. You're here every Tuesday. And so am I. Nora watched her cross back to the diner. Watched her disappear through the jingling door into the world of normal people with normal lives. People who had homes and families and futures. She opened the bag. The sandwich sat wrapped in wax paper. Perfect, whole. Her hands shook worse now, not from fear, from something else, something that felt dangerously close to crying. She took a bite. The bread was fresh, the turkey thick and real, the bacon crispy exactly how she liked it. Ruth had remembered. Someone had remembered. Nora ate slowly, making each bite last, savoring it the way you savor anything that might be your last. On the streets, you learn not to take anything for granted. Not food, not kindness, not tomorrow. At precisely 2:15, the sound came. The deep, controlled thunder of a Harley-Davidson rolling down 5th Street. Nora did not need to look up to know who it was. Garrett Steele, 6'4" of leather and tattoos and barely contained violence. Hell's Angels Oakland chapter leader. The kind of man who made grown criminals cross the street to avoid eye contact. The Harley pulled up to Rosie's diner. Garrett went inside for cigarettes and coffee, and his daughter waited by the window. Lily Steele, 7 years old, blonde curls catching the afternoon sun like spun gold. She wore a pink jacket despite the August heat, sparkly sneakers that lit up when she walked, and the kind of innocent smile that belonged to children who still believed the world was good. Every Tuesday, Lily would see Nora across the street, and every Tuesday, Lily would wave. Not the hesitant, uncomfortable wave of adults who felt guilty for having more. Not the pitying wave of do-gooders who wanted to feel charitable. Just a simple, genuine wave. Kid to kid, human to human. As if Nora was a real person. As if being homeless and 12 did not make her invisible. That wave had kept Nora alive more than once. On nights when the cold bit through all her layers and she wondered if sleeping was worth waking up for. On days when hunger turned her stomach into a gnawing beast that devoured her from the inside. On moments when she thought about stepping into traffic because at least then it would be over. Lily's wave reminded her that someone saw her. Someone knew she existed. That had to be enough. Now Lily stepped out of the diner onto the sidewalk. Pink jacket bright against gray concrete. She crouched down to tie her shoelace, tiny fingers fumbling with laces, humming something that might have been a Disney song. Completely unaware. Completely innocent. Movement caught Nora's eye, a black Dodge Charger rolling down 5th Street. Slow. Too slow. The kind of slow that made every instinct Nora had developed since that October night scream danger. She had learned to read cars the way most kids read comic books. Quickly. Instinctively. With her life depending on getting it right. This car was hunting. The engine purred like a predator. Tinted windows so dark they looked like holes cut into reality. License plate obscured with mud. It passed her, past the diner, past the bodega on the corner. Then it circled back. Nora's hands tightened on her sandwich. Her heart kicked into a faster rhythm. The tremor in her fingers went still. Adrenaline did that. Burned through fear and left you sharp-edged and electric, ready for whatever came next. The Charger rolled past again, not slowing at Nora, not interested in the homeless kid. Its trajectory aimed at something else, someone else. The diner door had jingled. Lily was on the sidewalk, tying her shoes. Nora's blood turned to ice water. Time fractured into broken shards of hyper-awareness. She saw everything with terrible clarity. The Charger's window beginning to descend with mechanical precision. Inch by inch, revealing darkness inside the vehicle. A shape, a hand, metal glinting. Lily's shoelace slipping through her fingers again, her giggle of frustration. That innocent sound slicing through the afternoon like a knife through silk. Through the diner window, Nora could see Garrett at the counter, his massive back turned to the glass, to his daughter, to the death machine, creeping up behind her. He was reaching for his wallet, paying for cigarettes and the cherry lollipop Lily had begged for. Oblivious. 3 seconds away from losing everything. 3 seconds. Maybe 4. That was all the time there was. Nora did not think. Thinking was for people who had the luxury of time. Thinking was for people who had options. Thinking was for people whose lives mattered enough to preserve. Nora had none of those things. But Lily did. Lily had a father who loved her, a home to go to, birthdays to celebrate, a future full of possibility. She had sparkly shoes and favorite songs, and the kind of childhood that came with waving at street kids because kindness was just something you did. She had everything Nora had lost, everything worth saving. Nora's legs moved before her brain caught up. The sandwich fell from her hands. The $20 bill fluttered away on a breeze she did not feel. Her worn sneakers, 2 sizes too big, and held together with duct tape pounded against concrete. 12 years old, 73 pounds of nothing, charging straight toward a gun barrel. Lily. Her voice cracked. Raw. Desperate. Tearing from her throat with nearly a year of accumulated loneliness and fear behind it. A sound she did not know she could still make. Lily looked up. Confusion spread across her innocent face. Her green eyes, the same shade as her father's, met Nora's for one brief, eternal moment. The car window was halfway down now. Metal glinted in the shadows. A gun barrel, black as nightmares, angling toward the little girl in the pink jacket. Nora's lungs burned. Her vision tunneled. The world reduced itself to one simple equation. Her body between that gun and that little girl. Nothing else existed. Not her fear, not her survival instincts, not the voice in her head screaming that she was going to die, not the knowledge that she was nobody. Nothing. A ghost that Oakland would forget before her body went cold. None of it mattered. Lily mattered. The first shot exploded through the air like thunder splitting the sky. Nora hit Lily with the full force of her sprint, her scrawny arms wrapped around the smaller girl's frame. She twisted mid-impact, turning her body to take the fall. They crashed onto the sidewalk in a tangle of limbs. Nora's back scraped against concrete. Her head bounced. Stars exploded behind her eyes. But she held on, curled herself around Lily like a shield, made her body a wall between the 7-year-old and the gun that wanted her dead. The second shot came a heartbeat later. White-hot agony punched through Nora's left shoulder blade. The bullet tore through muscle and tissue, driving deep before erupting near her collarbone in an explosion of pain so intense her vision went white. She had broken her arm once, falling from a fire escape while running from older boys. That had been a campfire compared to this inferno. This was a railroad spike driven through her body and set ablaze, every nerve ending stripped bare and electrified. A scream tore from her throat. Animal, raw, the sound of a child's pain, unfiltered by pride or pretense. Lily shrieked beneath her, high-pitched, terrified thrashing, not understanding why this strange homeless kid had tackled her, not comprehending that the loud bangs were gunshots meant to end her life. Nora held tighter, even as warmth spread across her back. Too much warmth. Sticky. Wrong. Even as her vision blurred at the edges, even as darkness crept in like spilled ink across paper. She held on. The third shot sparked off the concrete inches from Nora's head. She felt the heat of the bullet's passage against her cheek, felt fragments of sidewalk spray across her face like hot needles. But the shot missed. She had done it. 3 bullets. None had touched Lily. Through the haze of pain and shock, Nora saw Lily's face beneath her, those green eyes wide with terror, but alive, breathing, chest rising and falling with panicked sobs. The pink jacket was clean. No blood, no wounds. Safe. Worth it. The sedan's engine roared. Tires squealed against asphalt. Black rubber streaked across 5th Street as the shooter fled. The smell of burning rubber mixed with the copper tang of blood in Nora's mouth, but she barely registered any of it. The world was going soft around the edges, distant, like sinking into deep water while wearing stones for shoes. Then came a sound that made her bones vibrate even through the fog of shock. A roar, not an engine, something primal, full of rage and terror and love twisted into a weapon. The diner door did not open. It exploded. The force cracked it against the brick wall with enough violence to shatter the upper glass panel. Heavy boots thundered against sidewalk. Boom, 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 like war drums announcing the end of the world. Massive hands grabbed Nora's shoulders. Fresh agony bloomed where the bullet had torn through tissue and bone. Her scream caught in her throat, coming out as a weak whimper. She could not breathe, could not think, could not do anything but hurt. Lily. The voice cracked with raw desperation, a sound Nora would never have imagined could come from Garrett Steele. Baby, are you hurt? Talk to me. Daddy, Lily sobbed. She scrambled out from beneath Nora's protective embrace. Her small hands pushed at Nora's chest. Nora's body rolled limply to the side. The sky tilted at a sickening angle, blue and white and too bright. The girl, Lily's voice was high, hysterical. Daddy, the girl saved me. She jumped on me, and then there were loud noises, and she's bleeding so much. Daddy, she's bleeding. Faces swam into view above Nora, Garrett's weathered features twisted with something between fury and anguish. Lily's tear-stained cheeks. Strangers gathering in a circle, their mouths opening and closing with words that sounded underwater and far away. Garrett's hands moved to Nora's wound, applied pressure. The pain exploded fresh and blinding, so intense her back arched off the concrete. Another scream tore from her throat. Stay with me, kid. Garrett's command split the air with military precision, his scarred hands covered in faded prison tattoos and old burns pressed down hard. You hear me. Stay with me. Don't you dare die on this sidewalk. Nora's eyes found Lily through the haze. The 7-year-old clutched her father's leather vest with both hands, shaking violently, blood on the sleeve of her pink jacket. Nora's blood, but Lily was standing, breathing, alive. Worth it, Nora thought as the darkness finally swallowed her whole, pulling her down into a cold, empty place where the pain could not follow. The last thing she heard was Garrett's voice, rough, broken. Hold on, sweetheart. Please hold on. Then nothing. Somewhere in that nothing, Nora drifted. She dreamed of her mother, not the hollow-eyed woman she had become at the end, but the mother from before, the one who sang lullabies in a voice like honey, who made pancakes shaped like hearts on Sunday mornings, who called her my brave girl and meant it with every cell in her body. Ellen Calloway smiled at her from very far away. Nora tried to reach for her, but the distance between them was impossibly vast, an ocean of space and time and death. Not yet, baby. Her mother's whisper came from everywhere and nowhere. Not yet. You've got someone waiting for you. I'm tired, Mama. I know, sweet girl. But you're stronger than tired, stronger than pain. You always have been. I miss you. I miss you too. Every second. But you can't come to me yet. That little girl needs you. And I think you need her too. The darkness shifted, changed, became something less cold, less empty. Warmth touched Nora's face. Not heat, not fire, just gentle warmth, like sunlight through a window on a winter morning. The world returned in fragments, beeping, steady, mechanical, like a metronome marking time. The sterile smell of disinfectant, something plastic over her face. An oxygen mask pushing air into reluctant lungs. Pain but distant now, muted by chemicals flowing through her veins, turning agony into a dull, throbbing ache that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Nora's eyelids felt like they had been glued shut, each lash weighted down with lead. But she forced them open anyway, fighting against exhaustion that threatened to drag her back under. White ceiling tiles, fluorescent lights humming overhead. A hospital room. The realization hit her with surprising force. She was alive. An IV dripped clear fluid into her arm. Bandages wrapped her chest so tight she could barely breathe. Each inhalation required conscious effort, a deliberate expansion of lungs that protested every centimeter. Wires connected her to machines that tracked her heartbeat, her oxygen levels, her blood pressure, monitoring whether she would continue existing moment by moment. A private room, nicer than any place she had slept in since that October night. Better than the abandoned warehouse where she had been camping. Better than the shelters that always smelled like urine and despair. Kids like her did not usually get private rooms. Kids like her got stitched up in emergency rooms and released back into the streets like fish thrown back into polluted water. Invisible, disposable, forgotten. But here she was, in a real bed with clean sheets, machines keeping track of her heartbeat like it actually mattered. A nurse in pale blue scrubs adjusted something on one of the monitors, kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. She noticed Nora was awake and those eyes widened. You're up. Let me get the doctor. Wait. Nora's voice came out as a raspy whisper, her throat raw like she had been screaming. Maybe she had been during surgery. The nurse paused. The girl, Nora managed. Each word cost her. Lily, is she? The nurse's expression softened, transformed her professional mask into something warm and real. She's fine. Not a scratch on her. Thanks to you. She squeezed Nora's hand. You're a very brave young lady. The doctor said you're lucky to be alive. The bullet missed your lung by millimeters. Brave. The word felt foreign, clothing meant for someone else. Nora had always thought of herself as a coward, running from fights, hiding from police, too scared to ask for help because the system felt more dangerous than the streets. But maybe throwing yourself in front of bullets earned you a different word. Maybe that was the dividing line between coward and everything else. The nurse left to fetch the doctor. Nora stared at the ceiling. Her shoulder throbbed despite whatever painkillers they had pumped into her. Every breath sent sharp reminders through her chest that she had been shot, that a piece of metal had torn through her body at hundreds of feet per second. But Lily was alive. That was all that mattered, and that had to be enough. A sound filtered through the window, low and distant at first, then growing into something that made the glass rattle in its frame like teeth chattering. Motorcycles. Not a few, not a dozen. Nora turned her head toward the window, ignoring the spike of pain that lanced down her spine. Through the fourth-floor glass, she could see the hospital parking lot spreading out like a concrete ocean. Her breath caught. They kept coming. Wave after wave of motorcycles rolling into the lot like an invading army. Leather vests catching the late afternoon sun, chrome glinting almost blinding. The Hells Angels skull logo, that grinning death's head with wings repeated across a sea of broad backs. 20 bikes became 50. 50 became 100. Still they came, engines rumbling in a bass note that Nora felt in her bones. The sound bypassed her ears and resonated straight in her chest cavity, made her ribs vibrate, made the machines around her bed hum in sympathy. Nurses rushed past her door. Security guards spoke urgently into radios. The steady rumble surrounded the building like rising floodwater. Nora's heart rate spiked. The monitor beside her bed beeped faster. 150, 175, 200. 200 Hells Angels surrounding a hospital was not normal, was not safe, was not anything Nora had a framework to understand. Then came the footsteps. Heavy boots on linoleum. Each step deliberate. More than one set. Many more. The door swung open with enough force to bang against the doorstop. A man filled the doorway. Not just filled, dominated, made the space seem small and inadequate. Garrett Steele, 6'4" of muscle and scars and hard years. His face was an unreadable mask of weathered skin and sharp edges. Each line told stories of violence survived, of battles won and lost, of a life lived on the frontier of civilization where normal rules did not apply. His leather vest hung open over a black t-shirt that revealed arms covered in tattoos, skulls wreathed in flames, dates marking deaths, names of fallen brothers, a snake being strangled by skeletal hands. His eyes were steel gray, cold as a January river. They locked onto Nora with an intensity that made her want to disappear into the mattress. Behind him, the hallway was packed with Hell's Angels. Dozens of them, shoulder to shoulder, silent as gravestones, watching, waiting, their faces hard and unforgiving, marked by violence and loyalty in equal measure. Nora's throat went dry. Her heart hammered so hard the monitor's beeping became frantic. Every instinct screamed danger. Run, hide, disappear. But there was nowhere to run, and she was so tired of disappearing. Garrett took 3 steps into the room. Each footfall echoed despite the carpeted floor. He stopped beside the bed, towering over her. This was it, the moment the fairy tale ended. Maybe the club did not want witnesses. Maybe saving Lily had been interference in something bigger, something a 12-year-old could not understand. His massive hand reached out, moving toward her. Nora flinched, could not help it, hated herself for showing fear. But Garrett did not strike. His scarred hand landed gently on her uninjured shoulder. The touch was surprisingly tender, almost paternal. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion she had not expected, thick with something that sounded suspiciously like tears being held back by force of will. "You saved my daughter's life, kid." Nora swallowed hard. "Is she okay?" Not a scratch. His jaw clenched so hard Nora heard his teeth grind. A single tear traced down his weathered cheek, cutting through road dust and disappearing into his gray-streaked beard. "You took bullets meant for her. A 12-year-old kid with nothing. No family, no home, no reason to give a damn about anyone. And you threw yourself into gunfire for my little girl. I just..." Nora's voice cracked. "I couldn't let her die. She's always nice to me. She waves every Tuesday, like I'm a real person." Not just, she could not finish. Not just trash. Not just another invisible homeless kid waiting to become a statistic. Garrett's expression shifted. Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. Not directed at Nora, at someone else. Something. A promise of violence that spoke of debts paid in blood. He reached into his vest pocket, pulled out a photograph, placed it face down on Nora's bedside table with deliberate care. "Your family now." Garrett said it quietly, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. "The club voted unanimous. You're under Hell's Angels protection." He paused. Let that settle into the air between them. But family means something in our world, kid. Family means enemies inherit your wars. Family means the people who want us dead now want you dead too. Nora's stomach dropped. I don't understand. Garrett's steel gray eyes bored into her. I need to ask you something, and I need the truth, complete truth. Lives depend on it, yours included. Nora nodded, fear coiling in her gut. Garrett flipped the photograph over with one thick finger. A grainy surveillance photo. Black and white, printed on glossy paper. A man with a snake tattoo curling up his neck. The reptile's fangs disappearing behind his ear. Dead eyes that reflected no light, no humanity. The same cruel expression that had haunted Nora since that October night. The face she saw every time she closed her eyes. Her blood turned to ice water. Her hands began to shake uncontrollably, rattling the IV line. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps that made her wounded chest scream in protest. The hospital room spun sickeningly. Recognize him. Nora's hands clutched the bedsheet so hard her knuckles went white. Her entire body trembled. Because she did recognize that face. She had seen it in nightmares for months without end. Standing over her mother's body, the man who had watched Ellen Calloway die with pleasure etched into every line of his face. That's... She choked on the words. Tears burned her eyes. That's the man who killed my mom. Garrett's face hardened into something carved from granite. Behind him, the Hell's Angels shifted. Leather creaking, chains rattling. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. His name is Victor Hale. Garrett's voice was quiet, controlled in the way things are controlled right before they explode. He's the enforcer for the Vipers, rival gang that's been trying to push us out of Oakland for 2 years. He paused. His hand tightened on Nora's shoulder. And kid, he wasn't trying to kill my daughter today. The words hung in the air like poison gas. He was trying to kill you. Silence. The kind of silence that has texture and weight, that presses against your eardrums and makes them ache. I don't. Nora's voice cracked. Why would he want me dead? I'm nobody. Garrett pulled a chair close to the bed, sat, made himself less imposing. Your mother, Ellen Calloway. She wasn't just a dealer for the Vipers. She was their bookkeeper, their secret accountant. Every transaction, every payment, every connection to every dirty politician and corrupt cop on their payroll. Ellen kept records of all of it. Nora's breath caught. That did not sound like her mother. But then the woman who injected herself with needles had not sounded like her mother either. People contained multitudes. Some of those multitudes destroyed them. Before Victor got to her, Garrett continued. Ellen told someone she had insurance. Proof. Something she had hidden. A USB drive with everything on it. Every account number. Every name. Every crime. Enough to bring down the entire Vipers operation and put a dozen powerful people behind bars for the rest of their lives. His eyes locked onto Nora's with an intensity that felt like being pinned to the mattress. Victor believes you know where it is. That's why he let you run that night. He expected you to lead him to the evidence. He's been tracking you for months, waiting for you to retrieve it. When that didn't happen, when you just kept surviving without going near it, he decided to eliminate the risk permanently. You're not just a witness, Nora. You're the key to destroying everything he's built. The room tilted. Nora's mind raced through memories. Her mother the night she died. Those desperate words. I have the records. I can get them to you by Friday. And before that, before Victor arrived, Ellen kneeling beside Nora's bed, pressing something into the belly of Nora's old stuffed bear, the one she had carried since she was 3. Teddy, brown fur worn smooth in patches, one button eye replaced with a mismatched blue one. Keep Teddy close, sweetheart. Ellen's voice had been strange that night, tight, like she was trying not to cry. Don't ever let him go. Promise me. I promise, Mama. The memory hit Nora like a freight train. Her hands flew to her mouth. My bear, she whispered. She put something in my stuffed bear. Before he came, she told me to never let it go. Garrett leaned forward. Where's the bear now? Nora's face crumbled. I lost it, 3 months after. Some older kids jumped me, took everything I had, my blankets, my bag. Teddy, I tried to fight them, but there were 4 of them, and She couldn't finish. The loss of that bear had nearly killed her. Not the stuffing and fabric of it, but what it represented. The last piece of her mother, gone. Garrett processed this. His jaw worked beneath his beard. We'll find it. If that drive exists, we'll find it. But right now, what matters is keeping you alive. Victor Hale knows you're in this hospital. He knows you survived. And he's not going to stop. A commotion erupted in the hallway, raised voices. Then a small figure pushed through the wall of leather-clad bikers with a determination only a 7-year-old could muster. "Daddy, let me through!" Garrett turned. His hard expression melted instantly. "Baby, you shouldn't be." But Lily was already past him. Small legs carrying her to Nora's bedside. Eyes red-rimmed from crying. Blonde curls disheveled. She clutched a piece of paper in both hands crumpled from her tight grip. "You saved me." Lily said it simply, looking up at Nora with an intensity that made her chest ache. She climbed onto the chair Garrett had vacated, making herself tall enough to see Nora properly. She unfolded the paper. A drawing, crayons, a stick figure girl with a cape standing in front of a smaller stick figure girl, hearts floating around them in red crayon. At the top, in uneven letters, "My hero Nora." Something cracked inside Nora's chest that had nothing to do with bullet wounds. When was the last time someone had called her a hero? When was the last time anyone had drawn her a picture? When was the last time she had felt like she mattered? "Thank you," Nora managed, her voice thick with emotions she could not name. Lily smiled, that innocent expression transforming her tear-stained face into pure sunshine. "Daddy says you're going to live with us now." "Is that true?" Nora's eyes shot to Garrett. The massive biker crossed his arms. "Can't protect you if you're living it on the streets. The Vipers have eyes everywhere. You'll stay with us." "I can't. I don't want to be a burden. And I don't want to put Lily in more danger. She's already almost died because of me. Because of Victor Hale." Garrett's correction was immediate and firm. "Not because of you. You didn't pull that trigger. You didn't choose any of this. He did. And if you go back to the streets, you die, alone, and then he comes for other witnesses. Other loose ends. People like your friend Ruth." He paused, let that sink in. From the doorway, Brennan spoke. Older than Garrett, silver threading through his beard, a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. "The club's already voted. By the time you're discharged, it'll be official. Protection, provision, safety, safety." The word felt foreign. Nora had forgotten what safety felt like. Months of looking over her shoulder, sleeping with one eye open, knowing any moment could be her last. Ruth's voice echoed in her memory. "Every Tuesday you're here, and so am I." And now these dangerous men were offering her sanctuary, a home, a family, everything she had lost. But the cost was bringing a target into their house, painting a bullseye on Lily's back again, making this family a war zone. Nora looked at Lily. The 7-year-old had taken her hand, small, warm fingers wrapped around cold ones. "You're my best friend now," Lily announced with the absolute certainty only children possess. Best friends don't leave each other. And Nora, who had been alone since that night in October, who had been invisible and forgotten, and one step from death, looked at this little girl, who barely knew her but loved her anyway and made a choice. Not the choice to be safe, not the choice to be comfortable, the choice to stop running. The choice to stand still long enough for the world to see her and deal with whatever came next. "Okay," Nora whispered. Then louder, "Okay, I'll stay." Lily's face broke into a smile so wide it seemed to contain every good thing left in the world. She launched herself at Nora, wrapping careful arms around her neck, avoiding the bandaged shoulder with the child's instinctive gentleness. "We're going to be real sisters. I just know it." Nora held her, this small, warm body pressed against her own. And for the first time since her mother died, something inside Nora's chest began to thaw. A frozen thing she had forgotten was there, cracking open, letting warmth seep in like the first day of spring after a winter that almost killed you. Over Lily's shoulder, Nora met Garrett's eyes. The biker king stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable, except for the faintest gleam of moisture at the corners of those steel-gray eyes. "Welcome to the family, kid," his voice was rough. "We protect our own, and you are ours now." Behind him, 200 Hell's Angels rumbled their approval, the sound shaking the hospital walls, shaking the foundations of everything Nora thought she knew about the world. She was not invisible anymore. She was not forgotten. She was seen. And somewhere in the shadows of Oakland, Victor Hale was watching, waiting, planning. Because the girl who was supposed to die had survived, and the family that was supposed to be broken was stronger than ever. The war was just beginning. They left the hospital through a service entrance on the third morning. Security measure, Garrett explained. Less exposure, fewer angles for a rifle scope. Nora had spent 3 days drifting between morphine haze and sharp-edged wakefulness. Doctors came and went with clipboards and concerned expressions. Nurses changed bandages with gentle hands. Police officers asked questions she could not quite focus on answering. But through it all, one constant remained. Lily, the 7-year-old, had claimed the chair beside Nora's hospital bed like a tiny sentinel, refusing to abandon her post. She brought drawings, 19 of them by the third day, each one more elaborate than the last. Stick figures evolved into scenes. Nora and Lily holding hands beneath a smiling sun. A house with a red door and flowers in every window. 3 people standing together labeled in crooked letters, family. This one's you. Lily pointed to the tallest figure on the morning of day 3. And that's me. And that's Daddy. We all live together and nobody's ever sad, and we have pancakes every morning. Nora stared at the crayon rendering of a life she had never imagined having. It's perfect, I know. Lily's confidence was absolute. She climbed carefully into the hospital bed, avoiding the bandaged shoulder with instinctive precision. The doctor says you can leave today. Daddy's getting everything ready. Ready for what? For you to come home, silly. Home. The words sat in Nora's mouth like a stone. Heavy, foreign, a language she had forgotten how to speak. The door opened. Garrett entered, followed by Ruth Donovan, still in her diner apron, carrying a duffel bag that she set on the bed, and unzipped with the businesslike efficiency of a woman who had already cried her tears in private and was now focused on practical matters. Inside were clothes, real clothes, not the oversized cast-offs Nora had been surviving in, jeans that might actually fit, t-shirts in colors that were not stained or torn, a jacket for cooler evenings, socks, underwear still in the package, a pair of sneakers that looked close to her actual size. I guessed on measurements. Ruth's voice was determinedly cheerful. But we can exchange anything that doesn't work. Nora's throat sealed shut. She touched the fabric of a pale blue t-shirt, soft, clean, smelling like a store instead of a dumpster. I can't pay you back. Good thing I'm not asking you to. Ruth sat on the edge of the bed. Her cheerfulness cracked just enough to show what was underneath. Honey, I've been watching you slowly disappear for months, watching you get smaller and quieter and more invisible every Tuesday. I tried to help how I could, but her voice broke. I should have done more. Should have called someone. Should have. You fed me. Nora interrupted. Every Tuesday you saw me when everyone else looked away. You remembered I don't like pickles touching the bread. Ruth's eyes filled. That's the bare minimum of human decency. It kept me alive. The words hung in the air between them. Truth stripped of pretense. Ruth helped Nora into the shower, gently washing months of streets from her skin and hair. The water ran gray at first, then brown, then finally clear. Ruth's hands worked shampoo through Nora's chopped hair, massaging her scalp, rinsing with warm water. The simple act of being cared for made Nora's chest ache with a pain no medication could touch. My mama used to wash my hair, Nora whispered, her voice echoing off tile. Before, when things were good. Ruth's hands never stopped their gentle work. What was she like, your mama, before? She made pancakes shaped like hearts. She sang while she cooked. She called me her brave girl. Nora paused. Then the pills came. For her back at first. Then stronger ones. Then things that needed needles. She tried to hide it, but you can't hide something like that in a one-bedroom apartment. Ruth turned off the water, wrapped Nora in a towel that was clean and soft and smelled like lavender. Pulled her into a careful hug, mindful of injuries, but firm. Real. I'm so sorry, baby. So sorry you had to see what you saw. So sorry you've been alone. Nora let herself be held, let herself cry. Great gulping sobs that tore from her chest like something caged being set free. Months of grief pouring out in a hospital bathroom, while a woman she barely knew held her together with nothing but arms and patience. When the storm passed, Nora pulled back. wiped her face with the back of her hand. I must look awful. You look like someone who's been carrying too much for too long, Ruth replied, and who finally found a safe place to set it down. A windowless van waited at the service entrance. Nora emerged in her new clothes, the pale blue t-shirt fitting like it had been made for her jeans that did not hang off her hips, sneakers that did not require duct tape to stay together. Ruth had brushed her damp hair and tucked a strand behind her ear. There, you look like a girl again, not a ghost. The parking lot still held over 100 motorcycles. A smaller force than 3 days ago, but impressive nonetheless. Bikers stood in clusters, smoking, talking in low voices. They all straightened when Garrett emerged with Nora and Lily. Rough voices called out, "That's her. The kid who saved Lily. Tough little thing." Nora's face burned. She was not used to attention, not used to being seen, let alone celebrated. Lily grabbed her hand. "Don't be scared. They're happy you're okay." The van's interior was surprisingly comfortable. Bench seats with cushions, bottles of water. Lily climbed in first, patted the seat beside her. Nora sat carefully, her shoulder protesting every movement. Ruth took the seat across, Garrett and Brennan up front. They drove for what felt like hours, winding through Oakland, then out into surrounding areas Nora did not recognize. Urban sprawl gave way to scattered houses, then nothing but trees, thick enough to block most of the afternoon sun. Lily fell asleep against Nora's good shoulder, her breath warm and even, trusting in that absolute way only children trust, with their whole body, their whole weight surrendered. Ruth caught Nora's eye, smiled softly. "She hasn't slept well since the shooting. Nightmares. But she seems calm with you. I don't know why. I'm nobody special. You threw yourself in front of bullets for her. I'd say that's about as special as it gets." The cabin appeared after another 10 minutes on a dirt road. 2 stories, wood siding weathered to gray, wraparound porch, isolated. No neighbors visible in any direction. The kind of place that existed specifically to not be found. Inside was sparse but functional. Worn furniture, a kitchen with outdated appliances, curtains drawn tight across every window. But it was clean and warm and had walls that locked and a roof that did not leak. 2 bedrooms upstairs. Garrett pointed as he carried Nora's duffel bag up the narrow staircase. "Ruth's on the left. You girls take the one on the right. Brennan and I rotate watch downstairs." "Watch for what?" Garrett's expression was grim. "For trouble. It's coming, kid. Question is when." The bedroom was small, 2 twin beds with handmade quilts, a dresser, a lamp, a window covered with blackout curtains. It was not much, but it was more than Nora had possessed since she ran from her mother's apartment. More than cardboard and newspaper for blankets. More than waking every hour to check that no one had found her hiding spot. Lily bounced on one of the beds. "This one's mine. That one's yours. We're roommates, like real sisters." Sisters. The word lodged in Nora's chest, heavy and hopeful at the same time. That first night after Ruth had made dinner and Garrett had checked every window twice, Nora lay staring at the ceiling. Lily was asleep in the next bed, breathing soft and even. Downstairs, low voices. Garrett and Brennan talking, planning, guarding. The quilt smelled like lavender, like someone had cared enough to make things nice for whoever slept here. For the first time since Ellen died, Nora let herself believe she might actually survive this. The days fell into a rhythm. Wake up, eat breakfast with Lily and Ruth. Endure bandage changes, play quiet games to keep Lily entertained. Eat lunch, rest while Ruth read to them both. Dinner, sleep, normal. Almost. Except Nora could not stop hoarding food. She hid bread rolls under her pillow, stuffed granola bars into her pillowcase, kept a water bottle filled and hidden beneath her bed. Months of starvation had rewired her brain. Abundance felt temporary. Every meal might be the last. Ruth found the stash on day 4. She did not scold, did not lecture, just sat on the edge of Nora's bed and said, "There will always be more food tomorrow, honey. But I understand why you need to believe that for yourself first." She left the hidden food where it was. Gradually over the following days, Nora stopped adding to the collection. But she did not remove what was already there. Not yet. The safety net needed to exist, even if she never used it. Nights were harder. Nora woke screaming twice in the first week. The same nightmare every time. The closet, the crack. The snake tattoo, her mother's convulsions, Victor's face lit with that expression of inhuman satisfaction. Run, little girl. The first time it happened, Lily climbed down from her bed and crawled in beside Nora without a word, small arms wrapping around her, warm breath against her neck. It's okay. I'm here. Bad dreams can't get you when someone's holding you. That's the rule. What rule? The sister rule. I just made it up, but it counts. Despite everything, Nora almost smiled. On day 5, a woman arrived, mid-40s, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, a leather bag that marked her as professional something. Dr. Pamela Whitfield, therapist. Garrett had arranged it. I don't need therapy. Nora said it the way people say things they know are untrue but cannot yet admit. Pamela did not argue, just sat across from Nora in the cabin's small living room and talked about ordinary things. Colors, books, what Nora liked to eat when she had choices. Then carefully, without pressure, she asked about Ellen. And Nora, who had been holding the weight of her mother's death in her chest since that October night, found the words spilling out. All of it. The mother before the drugs, Sunday pancakes, lullabies, heart-shaped everything. Then the decline, the pills, the needles, the stranger wearing her mother's face. And that night, the closet, the crack, the snake tattoo, the needle, the look of pleasure on a killer's face. She told Pamela about the streets, about the hunger and the fear and the cold, about Tommy Briggs, who taught her to survive, about Ruth's sandwiches and Lily's wave, about the day she decided a 7-year-old girl's life was worth more than her own. Pamela listened, never interrupted, never judged. When Nora ran out of words, Pamela handed her tissues and said something that cracked open a door Nora had not known existed. You know what I hear in your story? Not just pain, not just trauma. I hear love. Extraordinary love. The kind that survives everything the world throws at it. You could have become hard, cruel, closed off. Instead, you stayed open enough to risk your life for someone else's child. That's not nothing, Nora. That's everything. Then during their third session, something happened that changed the shape of everything. Pamela had asked Nora to walk through the night Ellen died again. Slowly, in detail. Not to relive the trauma, but to examine it with adult eyes to find what her 12-year-old brain might have buried beneath layers of shock. Nora closed her eyes, let herself go back. The apartment, the chemical smell, the homework, the footsteps, but this time she went further back. Before Victor arrived, before the argument, before the needle, she went back to early evening when Ellen had come home from somewhere with shaking hands and mascara tracks on her cheeks. When she had knelt beside Nora's bed and picked up the old stuffed bear from the pillow. Teddy. Brown fur, worn smooth. One original eye, one mismatched blue button replacement. Nora had carried that bear since she was 3. It was the one object that connected every version of her life. For the drugs, during the drugs, after. Ellen's hands had trembled as she turned the bear over, found the seam along the back, pressed something small and flat into the stuffing. Her fingers working quickly, desperately, the way you move when you know time is running out. Keep Teddy close, sweetheart. Ellen's voice had been strange. Tight. Don't ever let him go. Promise me. No matter what happens. Promise. I promise, Mama. Nora's eyes flew open. She stared at Pamela. The memory was not new. She had always known about the bear, about her mother's strange urgency that night. But she had never connected it, never understood what Ellen had been hiding. She put something inside my bear, Nora whispered. Before Victor came. She put the USB drive inside Teddy. Pamela's expression remained professionally calm, but her eyes sharpened. Do you know where the bear is now? And that was where the memory turned to ash. Because Nora did know. She knew exactly when and how she lost the last piece of her mother. 3 months into her street life. January, the coldest week Oakland had seen in a decade. Nora had been sleeping in a doorway on Market Street, curled around Teddy for warmth and comfort, when 4 older boys found her. They wanted her spot, her blankets, everything she had. She fought. God, she fought. But 4 against 1 when you weigh 70 pounds and have not eaten in 2 days ends only one way. They took her blankets, her bete, her shoes, and Teddy. She had screamed for the bear, begged, offered everything else. But the biggest boy had laughed and tossed Teddy to his friend, and they had walked away, leaving Nora barefoot and shivering on frozen concrete with nothing but the clothes on her back. Tommy Briggs had found her an hour later, brought her to a warm vent behind a laundromat, gave her his own jacket. But by then, Teddy was gone, and with him the evidence that could destroy the Vipers. Tommy, Nora said slowly, her mind working through connections she had been too traumatized to see before. Tommy was there that night, not during the robbery, but after. He found me. He always found me when something bad happened. Like he knew. Like someone was telling him where I was. The realization crept in like ice water filling her lungs. She told Garrett that evening. Told him about the bear, about the USB drive hidden inside, about Tommy Briggs, who always seemed to appear at exactly the right moment, who drifted and disappeared and came back with bruises and money he could not explain. Garrett listened without interruption. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he made a phone call, spoke in a low voice, hung up. We'll find your friend Tommy. And we'll find the bear. But Nora, his voice carried a weight that pressed against her sternum. If Tommy's been reporting your location to the Vipers, that means he's the reason they found you on 5th Street. He's the reason they knew which corner you sat on every Tuesday. He's the reason that car came for you and nearly killed my daughter. Nora felt sick. Tommy was the only friend she had had, the only person on the streets who had treated her like a human being, who had known her secret and kept it, who had taught her to survive. But survival, she was learning, wore many disguises. Some of them looked like friendship. 3 days later, Brennan came back with intel. His expression was carved from stone. Found the kid, Tommy Briggs, 15 years old. Got a little sister, 9, named Clara. Vipers have been holding Clara for 8 months, using her as leverage. Tommy feeds them information. They keep Clara alive. Nora's heart cracked. He didn't have a choice. Garrett's jaw hardened. Everyone has a choice. But I understand the math. When someone's holding your family hostage, the equation changes. He wasn't my enemy. Nora's voice was small. He was a prisoner, just like me. Maybe. But his prison put you in a hospital bed and almost put my daughter in the ground. Garrett paused. I'm not saying he's evil kid. I'm saying the world is complicated, and the people who hurt you are not always monsters. Sometimes they're just desperate. That doesn't make the wounds any less real. That night, Nora lay awake staring at the ceiling, Lily's hand dangling from the top bunk, fingers twitching in sleep. The revelation about Tommy had torn something open that she did not know how to close. The only friendship she had trusted since her mother's death had been built on a foundation of betrayal. Not malicious betrayal, desperate betrayal, the kind born from love for a little sister held hostage, but betrayal nonetheless. How did you trust anyone when even the people who cared about you could be weapons aimed at your back? The district attorney came on day 10, Robert Caldwell, 50s, salt and pepper hair, an expensive watch that caught the light when he gestured. Detective Linda Marsh accompanied him. Navy suit, sharp eyes, no-nonsense posture. They sat in the cabin's living room. Garrett insisted on being present. Lily was at roost solid in the kitchen, kept safely out of earshot. Caldwell got straight to business. Nora, what you witnessed the night your mother died could be the key to putting Victor Hale away for life. But I need you to walk me through it. Every detail. Nora's hands started shaking. She looked at Garrett. He gave her a small nod. I'm right here. So Nora told them. The closet, the crack, the snake tattoo, the needle, the convulsions. Victor's words. Run, little girl, run before I change my mind about loose ends. Caldwell recorded everything with Nora's permission. When she finished, he looked at her with something that went beyond professional admiration. That testimony is powerful. If you're willing to say this in court under oath, we can ensure Victor Hale never sees freedom again. When, Nora whispered, trial's set for 4 months. We'll need to prep you extensively. Court is intimidating for adults. For a 12-year-old who's been through what you've been through, it'll be a war zone. Defense attorneys will try to destroy your credibility, make you seem unreliable, confused, attention-seeking. I'll do it, Nora said, whatever it takes. Caldwell nodded. There's something else. If we can recover that USB drive your mother hid, we won't just get Victor Hale. We'll bring down the entire Vipers operation. Every dirty connection, every corrupt official on their payroll, The whole house of cards. He leaned forward. Do you have any idea where the drive might be now? Nora told him about Teddy, about the robbery, about Tommy. Caldwell exchanged a glance with Detective Marsh that communicated volumes in silence. We'll find the bear, Marsh said, and the boy. On the eighth night, Nora woke to raised voices downstairs, angry, urgent. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Lily, and crept to the top of the stairs. Can't be sure who, Brennan was saying, but someone talked. Someone inside the club told the Vipers where this cabin is. Who knew about the location? Garrett's voice was ice, pure and absolute. Only patched members, maybe 15 guys total. Then we've got a traitor. Silence. The dangerous kind. What's the timeline? Hours, maybe less. If the Vipers know where we are, we move now. Where? Every safe house we have could be compromised. Garrett was quiet for a moment. Then we make a stand here. Call in everyone we can trust. Set up a perimeter. Nora's blood went cold. She backed away from the stairs, moved quietly to the bedroom. Lily slept on, innocent, unaware. Because of Nora, this little girl was in danger again. Because of what Nora had seen, what she knew, what she represented. She looked at the window, the blackout curtains hiding the night and the escape it offered. She could leave, disappear back into Oakland's belly, let the darkness swallow her the way it had that October night, remove herself from the equation and remove the target from Lily's back. She was halfway to the window when a hand caught her arm. Ruth stood in the doorway, nightgown, hair loose, expression fierce enough to stop a charging bull. Don't even think about it. You don't understand. If I leave, I understand perfectly. You think leaving saves everyone. You think making yourself a sacrifice solves the problem. Ruth pulled Nora away from the window, sat her on the bed, her hands gripping Nora's shoulders with a firmness that brooked no argument. Listen to me. That is exactly what Victor Hale wants. He wants you isolated, vulnerable, easy to eliminate. You run and you die alone in some alley, and then he comes for Lily anyway because she can identify the shooter from the car, and then he comes for me because I've been seen with you, and then anyone who's ever helped you becomes a loose end. But people are going to get hurt because of me. People are already hurt, and running won't undo that. Staying means we fight together, as a family. Nora's hands shook. I don't know how to fight. Then you learn. Starting now. Ruth moved to the dresser, pulled a small canister from the top drawer. Pepper spray, point, press, aim for the eyes. It buys you seconds to run. She set it on the bed, then pulled out a small knife in a leather sheath. Last resort only. You stab, you don't slash. Soft targets. Then you run. Her eyes met Nora's, deadly serious. I know this is terrifying. I know it's unfair. You should be worrying about homework and friends and what color to paint your nails, not about how to survive what's coming. She took Nora's trembling hands. But this is where we are, and I need you to be smart. Be prepared. Be ready. Night fell like a curtain dropping on the final act. Brennan positioned himself at the front window, rifle across his lap. Garrett checked every approach. 2 more Hell's Angels arrived as backup. Brothers Garrett trusted absolutely. Ruth kept the girls upstairs. Lily had woken. She sensed the tension the way animals sense earthquakes through vibrations too subtle for conscious recognition. Are the bad men coming? She whispered. Nora did not lie. Maybe. I'm scared. Me too. Lily looked up at her, green eyes wide in the darkness. But you're brave when you're scared. Daddy said so. He said being scared and doing the brave thing anyway is the bravest thing there is. Nora held her tighter. Your daddy's a smart man. The smartest. Lily agreed, then softer. Will you protect me again if they come? Yes. Always. The word felt like a vow carved into bone. Around midnight, the engines came. Distant at first, then growing. Not the familiar rumble of Harleys. Something different. Higher pitched. Aggressive. Garrett's voice cut through the cabin. Contact. 3 vehicles. 6 bikes. Moving fast. Brennan chambered around. Positions. Ruth grabbed both girls. Basement. Now. They thundered down the stairs through the kitchen, down another set of stairs, into a musty basement, lit by a single bulb. In the corner, a rough opening had been carved into the foundation. A tunnel leading into darkness. If I say run, Ruth instructed, you go through there. Don't stop, don't look back. Half a mile through the woods, there's a service road. Keys in a truck. You drive until you find help. I can't drive. Then you learn fast. Above them, the engines cut off. Silence dropped like a stone. Then a knock. 3 polite beats on the front door. Civilized, almost friendly, which made it worse. A voice called out, smooth, confident, carrying easily through wooden walls. We're just here to talk. No need for anyone to get hurt tonight. Nora's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice. She had heard it in nightmares for months on end. Had heard it say, run little girl, in a tone that made the words sound like a death sentence deferred. Victor Hale. Brennan's response was curt. You can talk through the door. A soft chuckle. The laugh of a man who found other people's defiance amusing rather than threatening. Fair enough. We're looking for something that belongs to us. A little girl who witnessed an unfortunate accident. We'd like her back. She's not yours to take. We can't let her talk. We can't let her testify. Hand her over and everyone else walks away. Your little princess keeps drawing her pictures. The waitress goes back to her diner. Nobody else has to die. Nora started toward the stairs. Ruth caught her. No, he's right. This is about me. If I go, you go and he kills you. Then he kills us anyway because we know too much. I've seen men like Victor Hale before. They don't make deals. They make examples. Above them, Brennan's voice. You've got 10 seconds to leave. That's disappointing, Victor said. Then the world exploded. The front window shattered inward. Glass sprayed like deadly rain. Gunshots cracked the night open, splintering wood, shouting. Boots on the porch. Lily screamed. Nora pulled her close, pressed a small face against her chest, covered Lily's ears with her hands. It's okay. We're okay. The words were lies, but lies were all she had. A figure appeared at the top of the basement stairs. A man, gun raised, eyes wild with adrenaline, a viper patch on his vest. He saw the woman and 2 girls huddled in the corner, and his mouth twisted into something that was not quite a smile. Well, isn't this cozy? Ruth stepped in front of the girls, her body a wall, her voice steel. You'll have to go through me. The man laughed, started down the stairs, gun aimed at Ruth's chest. Nora's hand closed around something cold. Metal, an old pipe leaning against the washing machine behind her. Rust spotted, heavy. She did not think, did not calculate, did not weigh options or consider consequences. She moved, up the stairs, past Ruth's grabbing hands. Pipe raised above her head. The man saw her coming, swung his gun toward her, too slow by half a second. Nora brought the pipe down with every ounce of force her body could generate. It connected with his temple with a sound she would never forget. A dull, wet crack that vibrated up through the metal and into her arms and settled into her bones like something permanent. The man's eyes rolled back. His body went slack. He dropped before he finished falling unconscious, before he hit the stairs, his gun clattering away into the darkness. Nora stood over him, breathing hard, the pipe still clutched in shaking hands. She had hurt someone, really hurt them. The realization made her stomach lurch, made her knees buckle, made the world tilt sideways. Nora. Ruth's voice was sharp. Basement. Now. But she could not move, could not reconcile what her hands had just done. Then a new sound cut through the chaos above. A roar, deep, powerful, unmistakable. Harleys, dozens of them, pouring up the dirt road like an avenging flood. Garrett's reinforcements. The battle above intensified. Gunfire, shouts, the heavy impact of bodies colliding. Vipers caught between the cabin's defenders and the Hells Angels army pouring in from outside. Outnumbered, outgunned, surrounded. Ruth pulled Nora back down to the basement. Lily was crying, pressed into the corner, hands over her ears. Nora dropped the pipe and wrapped her arms around her sister, held tight. It's okay. We're okay. The fight raged for minutes that felt like hours. Then gradually the gunfire tapered off. The shouts became fewer. Silence crept in. Footsteps on the basement stairs, heavy, deliberate. Ruth positioned herself in front of the girls, ready to fight with bare hands if necessary. But it was Garrett who emerged. Blood on his knuckles, a cut above his left ear, vest torn, but alive. Standing, his eyes found Lily first, then Nora. Relief crashed over his features like a wave breaking against a cliff. "You're okay," he breathed. "Thank God." He crossed the basement in 3 strides, dropped to his knees, pulled both girls into an embrace that crushed the air from Nora's lungs, and she did not care, did not want him to let go. "Daddy," Lily sobbed. "The bad men came and Nora hit one with a pipe, and I was so scared." Garrett's eyes met Nora's over Lily's head. "You protected them." Not a question. Nora nodded. Something fierce moved through his expression. Something proud. "My daughters," he said it quietly. "Both of you." When the police had gone and the wounded had been taken away, and the cabin had settled into a silence marked by bullet holes and broken glass, Garrett gathered everyone in what remained of the living room. 6 Vipers down, 3 dead, 3 in custody. "Victor escaped." "Of course he did," Ruth muttered. "But we heard him, and we sent a message." Garrett's voice carried the cold certainty of a man who understood violence as a language. "You come for Hell's Angels family, you pay in blood." Brennan added, "The traitor." We narrowed it down. Had to be someone who knew the cabin location and had reason to sell us out. "Who?" Brennan's face was grim. "Sawyer." The name hit Garrett like a physical blow. Nora saw it in the way his body stiffened, the way his hands curled into fists. Sawyer, a name that clearly meant something, something important. "How sure are you?" 90%. "He's been gambling heavy, owes 6 figures to the wrong people." Vipers offered to clear his debt in exchange for information. Garrett was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "Sawyer was with me at the founding. 22 years. He was best man at my wedding. He held Lily the day she was born." "I know, boss. Bring him to me." They brought Sawyer to the house 2 days later. Nora watched from the upstairs window. A man in his 50s, thick through the shoulders, tattoos covering both arms. He did not resist when Brennan and 2 others escorted him to the backyard. Garrett met him on the back porch. They stood face to face. 2 men who had ridden together for over 2 decades, who had buried friends together, who had bled together. Nora could not hear the words, but she could read body language. Garrett spoke. Sawyer listened. Then Sawyer's head dropped. His shoulders caved. His mouth moved, and even from the second floor, Nora could see the shape of the words, "I'm sorry." What she expected was violence. What she had learned from the streets was that betrayal was repaid in pain. What she knew about the Hells Angels suggested Sawyer would not walk away from this conversation. What happened instead redefined everything she understood about the man who had claimed her as his daughter. Garrett did not hit Sawyer, did not threaten him. He reached out and took Sawyer's cut the leather vest bearing the Hells Angels patch and removed it from his shoulders with a deliberateness that was somehow more devastating than any punch. He folded it, set it on the porch railing. Then he turned and walked inside. Sawyer stood in the yard alone, stripped, broken. Brennan drove him to the police station an hour later. That night, Nora found Garrett sitting on the back porch, staring at nothing. She sat beside him without speaking. The silence between them was comfortable in a way that surprised her. "I thought you had heard him," she said finally. "I wanted to." Garrett's voice was rough. "Every cell in my body wanted to break him apart." "Why didn't you?" "Because you and Lily were watching from that window." He glanced at her. "And I decided the kind of father I want to be doesn't solve problems that way. Not anymore." Nora processed this. On the streets, strength meant violence. Power meant the willingness to destroy. But Garrett had shown her something different. Strength could also mean restraint. Power could also mean choosing not to use it. That was the night she called him Dad for the first time. The word slipped out without planning, without thought. Just a quiet dad spoken into the darkness of the back porch while fireflies blinked in the yard. Garrett went very still. Then his arm came around her shoulders and pulled her close. And that was enough. Neither of them needed to say anything else. They moved to Garrett's house in East Oakland, a 2-story craftsman with a wraparound porch and flower boxes in the windows. Lily's mother had picked it, wanted something that felt like a home, not a fortress. Security cameras and reinforced doors were the only concessions to the reality of their lives. The room upstairs had bunk beds. Lily claimed the top. Nora took the bottom, matching quilts, a bookshelf, drawings taped to every wall, 2 dressers, a window facing the backyard where an old basketball hoop stood with a net that had seen better days. Normal. Almost. Weeks passed. Nora started therapy with Pamela 3 times a week. The nightmares decreased, not gone but manageable. She learned tools for the panic attacks, the hypervigilance, the moments when a car backfiring sent her diving behind furniture. Progress, not perfection. Pamela's favorite phrase. Ruth came daily, brought food, brought comfort, brought the kind of steady, uncomplicated love that asked nothing in return. She taught Nora to cook. Simple things at first, scrambled eggs, grilled cheese, then more complex recipes, pasta from scratch. Her famous turkey club. Standing side by side in the kitchen, Ruth would hum old songs while Nora chopped vegetables, and for brief, beautiful moments, the world felt safe enough to breathe in. Lily was relentless in her campaign to make Nora feel like family. She insisted on matching pajamas, on braiding each other's hair before bed, on a secret handshake that involved no fewer than 7 steps and a sound effect. She drew a new family portrait every week, updating it with details. A dog they did not have yet, a bigger house, a garden full of flowers, and Nora slowly began to thaw. Then 5 weeks after the shooting, the call came. It was a Tuesday. Nora woke to Lily's cheerful chatter from the top bunk. They dressed together. Lily in her school uniform. She had returned to classes with heavy security, Nora in clothes for a day at home. She was not enrolled yet. Too risky, Garrett said. Maybe after the trial. Ruth arrived to make breakfast. Pancakes, not shaped like hearts, but close enough to make Nora's chest ache with bittersweet memory. At 2 in the afternoon, Garrett's phone rang. He answered, listened, then went absolutely still. The color drained from his face. When he spoke, his voice was arctic. How many? He listened more, his hand gripping the phone so hard the case creaked. I'm coming. Lock it down. Nobody in or out. He ended the call, looked at Nora with an expression that made her blood run cold. Lily's school. There was an incident at pickup. The Vipers. They grabbed her. The room stopped. The air stopped. Nora's heart stopped. Everything stopped. Then everything collapsed. No, 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 no. Garrett grabbed her shoulders. Listen to me. We're going to get her back. Every brother in Oakland is looking. We will find her. This is my fault. Nora's voice broke. She could feel herself shattering, feel the cracks spreading through her chest like ice on a frozen lake that could not hold the weight of one more step. They took her because of me, May. They took her because they're monsters. That's on them, not you. His phone rang again. Unknown number. He answered on speaker. Victor Hale's voice filled the room, smooth, confident, savoring every syllable. Hello, Garrett. I have something of yours. Blonde, 7 years old, scared out of her mind. In the background, Lily's voice. Daddy, Daddy, help me. Rage consumed Nora, white hot, absolute. A fire that burned through grief and guilt and fierce and left nothing but a single crystalline intention. Let her go. Garrett growled. This is between us. Oh, but it's not. It's about the little witness. The girl who saw too much. Here's the deal. Her for the kid, straight trade. She comes alone. I see one biker, your daughter dies. Pier 27, abandoned warehouse. 2 hours. The line went dead. Garrett began making calls immediately, organizing, planning, marshaling forces. But Nora barely heard any of it. All she could hear was Lily crying. Daddy, Daddy, help me. The sound burrowing into her brain like a parasite that would never let go. I'm going, Nora said quietly, the words cutting through the chaos of the room like a blade through fog. Garrett stopped mid-sentence, turned to her. Like hell you are. He wants me. This is the only way to keep Lily safe. It's a trap. He'll kill you both. Maybe. But if there's even a chance he lets her go, I have to take it. Nora's voice did not shake. Something had settled inside her, something cold and clear and absolutely certain. She's 7 years old. She's there because I exist, because I saw something I shouldn't have seen. I can't let her die for that. I won't. Ruth stepped forward, her face white. Honey, you can't. She would do the same for me. Nora said it simply, and you know it. The room went silent, because everyone did know it. Lily Steele, 7 years old and fierce as a summer storm, would walk into fire for her sister without a second's hesitation. Garrett stared at Nora for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression. Not surrender, strategy. We do this smart. You go in wired, body armor under your clothes, tracker injected subcutaneously, and we shadow you, 50 brothers surrounding that warehouse before you ever step inside. He said alone. He doesn't get what he wants, neither do we. But we stack the deck. His voice hardened into something that brooked no argument. You keep him talking, Nora. You get him talking about your mother, about what he did, about his operation, every word recorded, every confession documented. You buy time, and you stay alive, and you let us handle the rest. Nora nodded. I understand. Brennan arrived 20 minutes later with equipment, body armor thin enough to hide under a hoodie, a wire so small it was nearly invisible, a tracker the size of a grain of rice that he injected into Nora's shoulder with practiced efficiency. This hurts, we know where you are, Brennan said. 30 seconds. That's all you need to survive. 30 seconds, and we're there. Ruth helped Nora dress, her hands shaking worse than Nora's. You don't have to do this, baby. Yes, I do. She's my sister. Ruth pulled her into a fierce hug. Then you come back. Both of you, you hear me. You come back. Garrett knelt in front of Nora, eye level, the way he had done in the hospital that first day. He pressed something into her hand, small, metal, a pendant on a chain, worn smooth from years of touch. Lily's mother wore this, Saint Christopher, patron saint of travelers, protection on journeys. His voice roughened. Both my daughters wear one now. Nora fastened it around her neck. Let it settle against her chest. The metal warmed from Garrett's hand. I'm scared. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just remember you're not alone. We're with you, every step. The convoy formed, 50 motorcycles that would peel off before the pier. Stay hidden. Create a perimeter. Nora rode behind Garrett, arms wrapped around his waist, her cheek pressed against his leather vest, feeling his heartbeat through the leather. Steady, strong, the heartbeat of a man who had already lost one person he loved to violence and would burn the world to ashes before he lost another. Whatever happens, Garrett said over the engine noise, you're my daughter, now and always. You come back to us. Nora held tighter, could not trust herself to speak. They stopped 2 blocks from Pier 27. The sun was setting. Long shadows stretched across the warehouse district like dark fingers reaching for something they could not quite grasp. Garrett checked Nora's wire, her armor, then pulled her into an embrace that said everything words could not. 30 seconds. He murmured against her hair. That's all you need. Nora nodded against his chest. When she pulled back 50, Hell's Angels were watching. These dangerous men who had adopted a homeless girl as one of their own, who were risking everything for 2 children. Brennan gave her a small nod. Bring our girl home, kid. Nora turned toward Pier 27. Each step deliberate, fighting the urge to run, to hide, to disappear into the shadows the way she had done for nearly a year. But she was done disappearing, done being invisible, done letting fear write her story. The warehouse loomed ahead, massive, dark, windows broken out like missing teeth, the kind of place where bad things happened and silence was the only witness. Nora touched the pendant at her throat, thought of Lily's wave across 5th Street every Tuesday, thought of Ruth's sandwiches wrapped in wax paper, thought of Garrett kneeling beside her hospital bed saying, "You're family now," thought of her mother's voice in the darkness between life and death. You're stronger than tired, stronger than pain. She took a breath and walked into the dark. The warehouse smelled like rust and seawater and decay, like things left to rot in darkness until they forgot they had ever been whole. Nora's sneakers made no sound on the concrete floor. She moved between stacked shipping containers, their corrugated walls rising on either side like the walls of a metal canyon. Dim light filtered through holes in the roof, casting shafts of gold and dust that made the space feel cathedral-like, sacred in the worst possible way. Her heart hammered against the body armor hidden beneath her hoodie, each beat a countdown, each breath a negotiation between her lungs and her fear. The wire taped to her sternum picked up everything, her breathing, her footsteps, the distant drip of water from a broken pipe somewhere in the vast darkness. 30 seconds. Brennan's voice echoed in her memory. That's all you need to survive. She counted her steps. 10, 20, 30. The warehouse opened into a central clearing where containers had been pushed back to create a rough arena. And there in the center, illuminated by a shaft of dying sunlight that poured through a hole in the ceiling, like a spotlight designed by Chard or the devil, was Lily, tied to a metal chair, wrists bound with zip ties that bit into skin too small and too soft for such cruelty. Her pink jacket was torn at the shoulder. Her blonde curls hung limp and tangled. Tear tracks cut through the grime on her cheeks, but her eyes were open. Her chest was rising and falling, alive. When Lily saw Nora, those green eyes went wide. Not with relief, with horror. Nora, no. Her voice was raw from crying, hoarse from screaming. You shouldn't have come. He's going to quiet little princess. The voice came from behind a shipping container to the left, smooth as silk drawn over a blade. Victor Hale stepped into the light with the casual confidence of a man who owned the darkness and everything hiding in it. He looked exactly as Nora remembered, exactly as he appeared in her nightmares, tall, lean. The snake tattoo vivid against his neck, its ink-black coils seeming to pulse with their own heartbeat. His eyes were flat, reptilian, the eyes of something that had evolved past the need for empathy. His mouth curved upward. That expression, the one he had worn while Nora's mother convulsed and died on a stained carpet, the one that lived inside Nora like a splinter buried too deep to extract. Right on time, Victor said. I knew you'd come. Heroes always do. Can't help themselves. It's a design flaw, really. This compulsion to sacrifice yourself for people who will forget you the moment you're gone. Nora stopped 10 feet from Lily, close enough to see the zip ties cutting into her wrists, close enough to see the terror in her sister's eyes, far enough to keep Victor's attention focused on her instead of the 7-year-old in the chair. Let her go. Nora's voice was steadier than she had expected. The body armor pressed against her chest like a second rib cage. The wire hummed silently against her skin, recording every word. I'm here. That's what you wanted. Victor circled slowly, a predator assessing prey, measuring angles and vulnerabilities, and the distance between himself and everything he intended to destroy. You know what I remember about that night? He said it conversationally, like they were discussing the weather, like the night in question had not ended with a woman dead on the floor and a child fleeing into the rain. Your mother begged. Did you know that? She said, please. She said, I have a daughter, a little girl who needs me. He tilted his head, studying Nora's face for cracks. I looked her in the eye and told her she should have thought about that before she stole from us. Keep talking, Nora thought. Every word is a nail in your coffin. Every confession is a chain that will hold you forever. She killed herself. Victor continued. Technically, the drugs did the work. I just provided the dosage. Generous of me, really. Quick, relatively painless. Better than she deserved for what she cost us. Rage burned through Nora's veins like acid, hot enough to melt the fear, hot enough to turn her vision red at the edges. But she held it, contained it, let it fuel her instead of consume her. You murdered her. The words came out flat, controlled. The voice of someone who had spent nearly a year learning that emotion was a luxury survival could not afford. I eliminated a liability. Victor's expression widened into something that might have passed for amusement if you did not look too closely at the emptiness behind it. Your mother was a talented bookkeeper, meticulous records, every transaction documented, every connection mapped. She was invaluable until she decided to grow a conscience, started talking about going to the police, about making things right. He paused, about protecting her daughter from the world she'd built. Nora's breath caught. Her mother had tried to protect her, had tried to get out. The USB drive hidden inside Teddy was not just insurance. It was Ellen Calloway's attempt at redemption. A dead woman's last act of love smuggled into the belly of a stuffed bear and pressed into her daughter's arms with trembling hands. Keep Teddy close, sweetheart. Don't ever let him go. She was trying to do the right thing. Nora said, and you killed her for it. I killed her because loose ends unravel empires. Victor stopped circling, faced Nora directly. And you little ghost are the loosest end of all. Nearly a year I've been looking for you, tracking a 12-year-old through Oakland's gutters. Do you know how embarrassing that is? A child. Outsmarting my entire operation for the better part of a year. I wasn't outsmarting anyone. I was just trying not to die. Same thing in my world. He snapped his fingers. The sound cracked through the warehouse like a gunshot. They emerged from behind containers, from shadows, from the darkness that had been watching and waiting with patient malice. 15 men, vipers, armed, faces hard, eyes dead. They formed a loose circle around the clearing, cutting off every exit, every angle of escape, every possibility, except the ones Victor Hale had already planned for. Nora's blood turned to ice, but she kept her eyes on Victor, kept her voice steady. You said a trade. Me for her. Here I am. Victor laughed. The sound echoed off metal walls and came back distorted, uglier than when it left his mouth. I lied. You're surprised. You shouldn't be. See, here's the thing about witnesses, and about little girls who know where evidence is hidden. You eliminate all of them. Every single one. Your mother learned that lesson. Her friend Tommy learned it when we picked up his sister. Nora's heart lurched. Clara, Tommy's 9-year-old sister. Don't worry. Victor waved a dismissive hand. The girl's alive. For now. Useful leverage. But you. He pulled a gun from behind his back. Black, matte, the barrel catching a sliver of light. And the princess. Your loose ends that need tying off. He aimed at Lily. Lily screamed. A sound that cut through the warehouse and through Nora's chest and through every layer of armor, both physical and emotional, that she had built since her mother's death. Nora did not think. Had not thought the first time either on Fifth Street, when 3 bullets had torn through the afternoon and her body had moved before her brain could calculate the cost. She was beginning to understand that this was not recklessness. It was instinct. It was love stripped of deliberation. It was the purest thing left inside her as she charged, not at Lily this time. At Victor, she covered the 10 feet between them in less than 2 seconds. 73 pounds of desperate fury colliding with a man 3 times her size. She hit him low, below the gun arm, drove her shoulder into his midsection with every ounce of momentum her sprint could generate. Victor staggered. The gun discharged. The bullet sparked off a shipping container somewhere to the right. The sound was deafening, apocalyptic. Lily screamed again. They crashed together against a container wall. Metal boomed. Nora grabbed for the gun, her small hands wrapping around the barrel, twisting, fighting with the desperation of someone who had already died once on a sidewalk and was not afraid of dying again. Victor backhanded her. Pain exploded across her face. Her vision fragmented. She tasted blood, copper and salt, but she held on, fingers white-knuckled around the gun barrel, refusing to release, refusing to surrender the one piece of metal standing between Victor Hale and her sister's life. He slammed her against the container. Once, the back of her head connected with corrugated steel. Stars. Twice. More stars. Her grip loosened. Her vision swam. The world tilted and blurred and threatened to go dark. Stupid girl. Victor snarled, his breath hot on her face. His eyes inches from hers. No light in them. No humanity. Just the flat patience of a predator finishing its meal. You really thought you could save her. You really thought a homeless nothing could stop me. His hand closed around her throat. Squeezed. The same hand that had closed around her mother's throat on that October night. The same grip. The same casual cruelty. Nora's lungs screamed. Her vision darkened at the edges. But through the narrowing tunnel of consciousness, she could see Lily, tied to the chair, thrashing against her bonds, screaming Nora's name with a rawness that belonged to no 7-year-old, that belonged to no child in any world that deserved the name civilized. Then the warehouse exploded with sound, not gunfire, engines. The roar of 50 Harley-Davidsons pouring through every entrance simultaneously. Headlights blazing like the eyes of some mechanical god descending on the wicked. The sound was not of this world. It was primordial, the battle cry of men who had chosen their side and were prepared to enforce that choice with everything they had. Hell's Angels flooded in from every direction. Through the main doors, through side entrances, through holes in the walls that looked recently made. They came on foot and on bikes and in a wave of leather and fury that crashed against the Viper's defensive line like an ocean breaking through a dam. The circle of 15 Vipers shattered. Men who had been standing in confident formation moments ago now scrambled for cover, outnumbered, outflanked, overwhelmed. Victor's grip on Nora's throat loosened. His head snapped toward the K. calculation moving behind his flat eyes, assessing, computing, recognizing in the space of a heartbeat that he had been outplayed. Nora did not waste the moment. She drove her knee upward with everything she had left. Connected. Victor doubled over. The gun wavered. She grabbed the barrel with both hands, twisted with her entire body weight behind it. The weapon tore free from his grip. She stumbled backward. Gun in her hands, heavy, foreign. She had never held a gun before. It felt like holding a live thing that wanted to bite. She did not aim it at Victor. She turned and ran for Lily, dropped to her knees beside the chair, her fingers fumbling with the zip ties, shaking so badly she could barely grip them. "It's okay," she gasped. "I've got you. You're okay." The zip ties were tight. Nora's fingernails broke against the hard plastic. Blood welled from her cuticles. She needed something sharp, something that could cut. The knife. Ruth's knife. The last resort in the leather sheath that Nora had strapped to her ankle beneath her jeans because Ruth had insisted and Nora had learned to trust the woman who had fed her every Tuesday and remembered about the pickles. She pulled the knife, cut the zip ties on Lily's right wrist, then the left. The plastic fell away, leaving red welts on skin that should never have known such marks. Lily launched herself into Nora's arms, sobbing, shaking, burying her face in Nora's neck. Small arms wrapping around her with a grip that said she would never let go. Not ever, not for anything. "You came for me," Lily sobbed. "You came even though it was a trap." "Always," Nora whispered. "I'll always come for you." Behind them, the battle raged. Fists and gunfire and the meaty impact of bodies colliding. Vipers falling one by one. The Hells Angels moving with coordinated precision. Veterans of 100 conflicts fighting for something that mattered more than territory or pride. Fighting for family. "Behind you," Lily screamed. Nora spun. Victor Hale was on his feet, blood streaming from a gash on his hairline where Nora's earlier blow had opened skin. He had recovered a gun from somewhere, one of his fallen men. It was aimed at Nora's chest. The mask of civility was gone, stripped away to reveal what had always lived underneath. Not a businessman, not an enforcer, just a man who killed because it was the only language his soul understood. "You know what?" His voice was conversational, almost friendly, the way it had been in the apartment while Ellen Calloway's heart was stopping. "I'm going to enjoy this, so will I." Garrett's voice came from behind Victor, low, controlled, carrying the weight of a man who had spent his entire adult life walking the line between violence and something better, and had finally permanently chosen his side. Victor froze, his eyes widened. A fraction, just enough to betray the fear he had never had to feel before. The fear of a predator, realizing it was no longer at the top of the chain. Garrett Steele stood 15 feet behind him, gun raised, steady as stone, his leather vest torn, blood on his knuckles, a cut above his ear that bled freely down his jaw. He looked like war itself had tried to destroy him and failed. "Iron," Victor said, the nickname carrying a grudging respect that made Nora's skin crawl. "You made 3 mistakes," Garrett said quietly. "You came after my daughter, both my daughters. You came after my city, and you thought you could win." Victor's gun arm trembled, the first tremor Nora had ever seen in the man, the first crack in the composure that had held steady while he murdered her mother. "If you shoot me, you're no better than I am." "I know," Garrett said, "and that used to not matter." He paused, his eyes flicked to Nora, to Lily pressed against Nora's chest, to the 2 girls he had claimed as his own, the 2 lives he had built his world around, the 2 reasons he had to be something more than what the streets had made him. He lowered the gun. Slightly, enough to matter. "Lucky for you, I've got daughters to raise, and they need to see there's another way." His voice hardened. "You'll rot in prison, where monsters like you belong. And every day for the rest of your life, you'll know that a 12-year-old girl beat you, a homeless kid with nothing, and she won." Victor's face contorted. Something ugly and desperate moved behind his eyes, the calculation of a man with nothing left to lose. He did not turn toward Garrett. He lunged at Nora, one last attempt, one final grab at the loose end he had spent months trying to eliminate. His body launching across the distance between them, with the desperate speed of a dying predator making its last strike. Nora raised the gun she still held, her hand steady now. The tremor that had lived in her fingers since her mother's death suddenly impossibly gone. "Stop," she said. Victor kept coming. I said stop. His hand reached for her, fingers extended, the snake tattoo stretching across his neck like the real thing uncoiling to strike. Nora pulled the trigger. Click. Empty. The magazine spent. The gun nothing but dead weight in her hands. Victor's mouth curved upward one final time. That look, the one from the apartment, the one from the closet door, the one that said loose ends don't survive. Brave try, little girl. Garrett's fist connected with Victor Hale's jaw. The impact carried 45 years of violence behind it. 22 years of building something from nothing. The memory of a wife killed in crossfire. The terror of almost losing both daughters. The rage of a father who had reached the absolute limit of his mercy. Victor dropped like a puppet with its strings cut, unconscious before his body finished falling. His head hit the concrete with a sound that echoed through the suddenly quiet warehouse. The snake tattoo lay still against his neck. Just ink. Just a drawing on the skin of a man who was no longer dangerous to anyone. Nora stood there, gun still raised at nothing, arms extended, shaking from head to toe. Every muscle in her body vibrating with adrenaline and terror and relief so overwhelming it felt like drowning in reverse. "It's over," Garrett said gently. "You can put it down now." The gun slipped from Nora's fingers, clattered on the concrete. She stared at it for a moment. This object that was supposed to hold the power of life and death, but had been empty when it mattered. She had pulled the trigger. Had been willing to do the things she swore she could never do. To protect her sister, she had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. The gun being empty was luck, not choice. She would have left to live with that knowledge, would have to sit with it in therapy and in the quiet hours of the night and in the space between who she was and who she was becoming. But not now. Now she turned and gathered Lily into her arms and held her so tight that neither of them could tell whose heartbeat was whose. They collapsed together on the warehouse floor, both crying, both alive, both refusing to let go. "You came for me," Lily said again, like she needed to say it, needed to hear it reflected back, needed proof that she had not imagined the moment when her 12-year-old sister had walked into a death trap and chosen love over survival. "Every time," Nora whispered, "no matter what, I will always come for you." Police flooded the warehouse within minutes. Sirens, flashing lights, paramedics with stretchers and urgent hands. The controlled chaos of a system designed to impose order on the aftermath of violence. Detective Linda Marsh arrived with a tactical unit. She took in the scene. The unconscious Victor Hale being cuffed by officers. The captured Vipers being lined up against a container wall. The Hells Angels standing in clusters, battered but unbowed. And at the center of it all, two girls clinging to each other on a concrete floor. Marsh crouched beside Nora. Her expression carried something Nora had not seen from law enforcement before. Not pity, not suspicion, respect. "You walked into a death trap for your sister. She would do the same for me," Nora said simply. Marsh smiled. "Yeah, I believe she would." Later, sitting in the back of an ambulance with a blanket around her shoulders and Lily pressed against her side, Nora felt Garrett approach. He sat beside them, pulled both girls into his arms, his hands shaking. The first time Nora had ever seen his hands shake. "You know what I realized today," he said quietly. "What?" "Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters. And you showed up. Twice put yourself between my daughter and bullets. Between my daughter and monsters." He paused. "Papers came through this morning. Official adoption. You're a Steele now. Legally, permanently, if you still want to be." Nora looked at him. This man carved from violence and loss who had rebuilt himself into something better because two girls needed him to be. Who had lowered his gun when every instinct screamed to fire. Who had chosen justice over revenge because his daughters were watching. "I want to be," she whispered. "Then it's done." He kissed her forehead, then Lily's. "My daughters. Both of you. Now and always." Ruth appeared with blankets and hot chocolate produced from somewhere that defied explanation. She fussed over both girls with tears streaming freely down her face, not bothering to hide them, not caring who saw. Brennan approached with a plastic evidence bag. "Found this on Victor." He held up a small object, a USB drive, battered, scratched, but intact. It was in his vest pocket. Looks like the Vipers tracked down the kids who robbed Nora back in January. Recovered the bear, tore it apart, found the drive. He's been carrying it ever since, trying to crack the encryption. Nora stared at it, that small piece of plastic and metal. Her mother's last gift. Her mother's attempt at redemption. Hidden inside a stuffed bear, lost to the streets, hunted down by the very people it was meant to destroy, and now recovered. He had it all this time, she whispered, and couldn't open it, couldn't access it. Brennan confirmed. Password protected, encrypted. We need the key. Nora knew. She had known since the moment Garrett first told her about the USB drive. Knew it the way you know things that are written into your bones, into the marrow of who you are. My birthday, she said. The password is my birthday. October 7th. The drive was handed to Detective Marsh. Within hours, a forensic team confirmed Nora was right. The file opened with her birth date. Inside were hundreds of documents, transaction records, account numbers, names, dates, amounts, a meticulous map of the Viper's entire operation. Every drug deal, every bribe, every corrupt official and dirty cop on their payroll. Ellen Calloway had documented everything with the precision of a woman who knew she might not survive long enough to testify, but was determined that the truth would outlast her. Nora sat in the police station while Marsh and Caldwell reviewed the evidence. She thought about her mother, not the hollow-eyed stranger from the end, the mother from before, who made heart-shaped pancakes, who sang in the kitchen, who called Nora her brave girl. Ellen Calloway had been many things, flawed, addicted, lost, but in the end she had tried to do the right thing, had hidden the truth inside a child's stuffed animal and pressed it into her daughter's arms with shaking hands, had loved Nora enough to try to burn down the world that was consuming them both. That had to count for something. That had to matter. It did. 4 months later, the trial began. The courtroom was packed, media outside, security tight. Hell's Angels in the gallery, cleaned up but unmistakable their presence, a statement that required no translation. Victor Hale sat at the defense table in a suit that did not fit the monster inside it. His lawyers were expensive, aggressive. They came at Nora with everything they had. She's a troubled child, the defense attorney said during cross-examination. Homeless, traumatized, prone to fabrication. How can we trust the testimony of a 12-year-old who has every reason to lie? Nora sat in the witness stand, small against the wooden chair. But she did not shrink. Months of surviving Oakland streets had stripped away the ability to be intimidated by men in suits. After Victor Hale, everyone else was manageable. She told the truth. Every word. The closet, the crack, the snake tattoo, the needle, her mother's convulsions. The look of satisfaction on a killer's face. Run, little girl. She spoke clearly, and she spoke to the jury. 12 faces watching her with the weight of judgment and the burden of believing. When the defense attorney pressed harder, suggesting she had invented the entire story for attention, for the security of the Steele family, for a home she never had, Nora met his eyes and said the words that would be quoted in every newspaper in the state. My mother died in front of me. I watched a man murder her and smile while he did it. I don't need to make that up. I wish I could forget it. Every night I wish I could forget. But I can't. So the least I can do is make sure the man who killed her never does it to anyone else's mother. The courtroom went silent. The defense attorney sat down. Then they played the wire recording from the warehouse. Victor's own voice filling the courtroom, describing how he had killed Ellen Calloway, detailing the dosage, admitting to the murder with the casual tone of a man discussing a business transaction. The jury listened, their faces hardening with every word. The USB evidence completed the destruction. Caldwell presented it methodically. Every document, every transaction, every name, the web of corruption laid bare under fluorescent courtroom lights. Victor Hale's lawyers objected, argued, filed motions, but the evidence was overwhelming, a mountain of truth that no legal maneuvering could move. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty, all counts, murder, kidnapping, attempted murder of minors, drug trafficking, conspiracy, Corruption charges that reached into City Hall and the police department and places no one had imagined the Viper's tentacles had stretched. Life without parole. The judge's gavel fell with a sound that echoed through the courtroom and through Nora's chest and through all the darkness that had led to this single bright moment of justice. Victor Hale's expression did not change as the verdict was read, that flat composure holding to the end. But as the officers led him from the courtroom, his eyes found Nora in the gallery, found her sitting between Garrett and Lily, found her wearing the St. Christopher pendant and the quiet, unshakable certainty of a girl who had walked through fire and come out the other side. He did not smile. The mask he had worn over Ellen Calloway's body was gone, maybe forever. And in its absence, Nora saw something she had never seen in those flat eyes before. Fear. Good, she thought. Now you know how it feels. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. But Hell's Angels formed a wall around the family, escorted them to waiting bikes, spirited them away before the media storm could fully descend. In the weeks that followed, the Vipers collapsed. Arrests cascaded. The USB evidence triggered investigations that dismantled the gang's infrastructure completely. Corrupt officials resigned. Dirty cops were indicted. The empire Ellen Calloway had documented with such precision crumbled under the weight of truth she had hidden inside a child's stuffed bear. Tommy Briggs was found, alive, scared, living in a Viper safe house that the FBI raided on a Tuesday morning. His sister Clara was with him, 9 years old, thin but unhurt. The Vipers who had held her for 8 months were arrested in the same sweep that dismantled the rest of the operation. When Nora saw Tommy for the first time since her street life, he could not meet her eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't want to. They had Clara. They said they'd kill her if I didn't tell them where you were." "I'm so sorry, Nora." Nora looked at this boy who had been her only friend, who had brought her water when she was dying of thirst, who had kept her secret, who had also been the reason a car full of killers found her on 5th Street and nearly killed a 7-year-old girl. "I know," she said, "and I forgive you." The words surprised her. She had not planned them, had not rehearsed them, but they were true. Tommy was not a villain. He was a 15-year-old boy trapped in a nightmare not of his making, forced to choose between his friend and his sister. An impossible choice, the kind that breaks people regardless of which option they take. Tommy cried. Nora held him. 2 kids who had been chewed up by a world that should have protected them. 2 survivors of the same war, standing on the same side, even if the battle had temporarily put them on opposite ones. 5 months after the shooting, the adoption was finalized. Nora sat in a courtroom that felt entirely different from the one where Victor Hale had been sentenced. This one was warm, bright. Judge Margaret Holloway smiled from the bench. The paperwork was brief, signatures, stamps, legal language that translated into something simple, something sacred. Nora Calloway Steele. When the judge announced it, Lily erupted from her chair. Real sisters. We're really, truly, officially sisters. She grabbed Nora in a hug so fierce it made the courtroom laugh. Even the judge smiled. Garrett signed the papers with hands that did not shake, but his eyes were bright. And when he pulled Nora into his arms afterward, his voice was rough with everything he could not say in a room full of strangers. "Welcome home, kid. For real this time." Ruth was there, crying and smiling simultaneously. She had brought a cake from the diner, heart-shaped, because she had remembered what Nora told her about Ellen's pancakes, because that was who Ruth was, a woman who remembered details and turned them into love. The celebration continued at Garrett's house. Just family. Ruth cooked. Garrett set the table. Lily directed decorations with the authority of a 7-year-old general, which meant streamers on every surface and glitter in places glitter should never be. Hell's Angels families filled the backyard, rough men laughing with their children, women trading recipes with Ruth, the kind of gathering that looked ordinary from the outside but felt miraculous from the inside. A truck pulled up mid-afternoon. Brennan emerged carrying a cardboard box that moved and whimpered and had a wet nose poking through a hole in the corner. Lily's scream of delight could have been heard in San Francisco. A golden retriever puppy tumbled out of the box in an avalanche of paws and floppy ears, and a tail that wagged with such enthusiasm it threatened to propel the animal airborne. "Every family needs one," Garrett said. Figured it was time. Lily was already on the ground, puppy in her lap, licking her face, both of them making sounds of pure, uncomplicated joy. "What should we name him?" Garrett asked. Nora knelt beside her sister. The puppy transferred his attention immediately. Wet nose against her neck, warm body wiggling against hers. She thought about the word that had defined the past 5 months. The word that had been given to her by strangers who became family. The word that meant everything. Guardian, she said softly. "We should name him Guardian." Garrett smiled, understanding the weight, understanding the meaning. Guardian it is. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Nora found herself standing at the edge of the yard, watching. Ruth arranging desserts on the patio table, Garrett flipping burgers with Brennan, both men laughing at something she could not hear. Lily attempting to teach Guardian to shake hands with results that were enthusiastic but structurally unsound. Hell's Angels and their families scattered across the lawn like a living patchwork quilt of leather and laughter and belonging. "You okay, sweetheart?" Ruth appeared at her elbow, always knowing when Nora needed grounding, when the world threatened to become too large or too good to be real. "I'm good," Nora said, and meant it in a way she had never meant it before. "I was just thinking." "About what?" "About how, back in October, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd be invisible forever, that I'd disappear and nobody would notice, nobody would care." She paused, watched Lily giggle as Guardian attempted to climb into her lap and failed spectacularly. "But I'm here. I'm seen. I matter." Ruth pulled her close. "You always mattered, honey. You just needed the right people to see it." Later, as the party wound down and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Garrett called for attention. "Got something for the girls," he announced. He disappeared into the house and returned carrying 2 leather vests, small, custom-made. On the back of each, instead of the full club insignia, was a single patch. One word stitched in block letters. Family. Lily's eyes went enormous. "We get to be Hell's Angels. Honorary. Until you're old enough to decide for yourselves. But yes, you're one of us." He helped both girls into their vests. Nora's settled on her shoulders like something she had been missing without knowing it. Like a piece of armor she had needed all along. Not the body armor that stopped bullets. Something better. Something that said, "You belong here, you are wanted here, you are home." The gathered Hell's Angels erupted in cheers, whistles, applause. Brennan stepped forward, his scarred face creased in a rare, genuine smile. "Welcome home, little sisters." Nora stood in the fading light, surrounded by family, wearing a vest that said she belonged, with a sister who loved her without conditions, and a father who had chosen her without obligation, and a woman who had fed her every Tuesday and remembered about the pickles, and a dog named Guardian who was currently chewing on Brennan's boot. She thought about Ellen, wondered if her mother could see this. If somewhere beyond the distance that separated the living from the dead, Ellen Calloway was watching her daughter stand in a yard full of people who loved her and finally be seen. "I hope you're proud, Mama. I hope you know I'm okay." A hand slipped into hers. "Lily." "Always knowing. You're crying," Lily observed. "Happy tears. Those are the best kind." That night, tucked into her bottom bunk with Guardian curled at her feet, Lily's breathing soft and steady from above, Nora lay in the darkness and let the silence settle around her like a blanket. She thought about the girl she had been when she ran from that apartment in October. 12 years old, alone, invisible, running from a dead man's smile, sleeping in warehouses, eating from trash cans, believing with absolute certainty that she was nobody, nothing, a ghost that the world would forget the moment she stopped haunting it. That girl felt like a stranger now, not because Nora had forgotten her. She would never forget her. That girl had kept her alive, had fought and starved and endured and survived when survival required more courage than most adults would ever need. That girl deserved to be remembered, honored, carried forward into whatever came next. But she was not that girl anymore. She was something new, something forged in fire and tempered by love, something that had a name and a family and a vest that said she belonged, and a sister who made up rules about bad dreams, and a father who chose justice over revenge, and a dog who snored. She was Nora Calloway Steele. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness, "for all of it." From the top bunk, Lily's sleepy voice drifted down. "Did you say something?" Just thinking out loud. Think quieter. Guardian and I are trying to sleep. Nora smiled, closed her eyes. For the first time in 11 months, she slept without nightmares. Outside Oakland hummed with life. The city that had swallowed her whole and then given her back transformed. The city where she had been invisible and then became impossible to ignore. The city that was against all odds home. In the morning, there would be school and homework and chores and arguments about whose turn it was to walk the dog. Normal things for a girl who would never be normal, but had learned that extraordinary was not such a bad thing to be. Nora Calloway Steele, daughter, sister, survivor, guardian. She was exactly where she belonged.